The morning had started like any other at the Dornan household, soft sunlight spilling through the kitchen window, the sound of laughter drifting from the garden. Jamie stood by the counter, making coffee while Amelia hummed quietly to a tune on the radio. Their daughters were playing outside, barefoot on the grass, their giggles rising and falling like music. It was peaceful, ordinary, perfect. Then everything changed. "Daddy," the sound came first, sharp, panicked. Jamie turned just in time to see Elva stumble forward and collapse onto the grass. The world went silent. He dropped the mug in his hand. Porcelain shattered across the floor, and sprinted outside. "Elva," his voice cracked as he fell to his knees beside her. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. For one horrifying second, she didn't respond. "Call an ambulance," he shouted. Amelia was already on the phone, her hands trembling, her voice breaking. Within minutes, the garden that had been filled with laughter turned into chaos, flashing lights, paramedics, neighbors standing frozen behind hedges. Jamie held Elva's hand tightly as they lifted her onto the stretcher, whispering, "It's okay, love. Daddy's here, you're going to be okay." But his own voice trembled, betraying him. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Sirens wailed. Jamie sat beside his daughter, helpless, his mind spiraling. He'd faced every kind of fear before, criticism, failure, the pressures of fame, but nothing compared to this. This was primal. This was terror. When they arrived, the doctors rushed Elva into emergency care. Jamie and Amelia were left standing in the sterile corridor, staring at the doors that had just closed behind their child. For a long time, neither spoke. Amelia gripped his arm so tightly it hurt. Jamie's heart pounded in his ears. Every minute felt like an hour. Every sound, footsteps, beeping monitors, the rustle of hospital gowns, clawed at his nerves. Finally, a doctor approached them. His face was calm, but his eyes were serious. "Mr. Dornan," he said gently, "your daughter's kidneys aren't functioning properly. We believe she's suffering from acute kidney failure. We're stabilizing her, but the next 24 hours are critical." Jamie blinked, trying to process the words. "Kidney failure," he repeated, as if saying them aloud would make them less real. "I'm afraid so," the doctor said. "We'll do everything we can. But she's very weak." For a moment, Jamie couldn't breathe. He felt Amelia's body go limp beside him, and he caught her before she fell. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't speak. There were no words left. Hours passed, the waiting room filled with the soft hum of hospital life, machines, murmured conversations, the occasional cry from down the hall. Jamie sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His hands were clasped together so tightly his knuckles turned white. He'd been through loss before, losing his mother when he was 16, saying goodbye to his father years later, but this was different. This was his child, his heart outside his body. When the nurse finally allowed them into the intensive care unit, Jamie's legs almost gave out. He stopped at the door, staring through the glass. Elva lay small and pale against the white sheets, a web of tubes and monitors surrounding her. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a fragile miracle. Amelia pressed her forehead against the glass, sobbing silently. Jamie couldn't move, his throat closed, his vision blurred. The man who'd played soldiers, lovers, heroes, who'd faced cameras and crowds without fear, was now utterly broken. He placed his hand on the window, whispering to himself, "That's my little girl." He couldn't go in right away. He couldn't bear the sound of the machines, the sterile smell of disinfectant, the helplessness that came with knowing there was nothing he could fix. Later that night, when the hospital had gone quiet, he sat alone in the corridor outside Elva's room. The vending machine hummed beside him, a fluorescent light flickering overhead. In his hands was one of Elva's small bracelets, pink plastic beads she'd made for him weeks ago. He turned it over and over between his fingers. The bracelet caught the dim light, glinting faintly, a tiny reminder of innocence, of laughter, of how fragile everything could be. Amelia came to sit beside him. Her eyes were red, her voice barely a whisper. "She's still fighting," she said. Jamie nodded, his jaw tight. "She's the strongest person I know." They sat together in silence. Somewhere down the hall, a heart monitor beeped softly, steady and rhythmic, a fragile pulse of hope in the stillness. Jamie buried his face in his hands. "If I could trade places with her, I would," he whispered. "God, I would." Amelia rested her head on his shoulder, and for a long time, they didn't move. Outside, the rain began to fall against the hospital windows, slow, relentless, echoing the quiet storm that had settled inside them both. When the doctor passed by again, he paused and said gently, "We'll know more in the morning." Jamie lifted his head, eyes hollow. Morning felt like a lifetime away. He looked through the glass one more time at his daughter, so small, so still, and whispered the only prayer he knew. "Please, just let her stay." The night dragged on like an eternity. The hallway outside the ICU was cold and quiet, every sound amplified, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes, the hum of fluorescent lights, the steady rhythm of Elva's monitor that seemed to echo inside Jamie's chest. He hadn't slept, he couldn't. Every time his eyes closed, he saw her face, pale, still, 1,000 miles away from the little girl who used to run through their garden laughing. He sat with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped so tightly his fingers hurt. A cup of untouched coffee sat beside him, long gone cold. Amelia had fallen asleep against his shoulder hours ago, her hand still clutching his. He turned his head slightly and kissed her hair. When the first hint of dawn broke through the hospital windows, the doctor appeared. Jamie stood up immediately, his heart pounding. "She's stable," the doctor said softly. "Her kidneys are responding to treatment. It's too early to say she's out of danger, but it's a good sign." Jamie's body went weak with relief. He closed his eyes, a tremor running through him. Amelia covered her mouth, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. For the first time in 24 hours, the air around them didn't feel suffocating. "Can we see her?" Jamie asked. "Just for a few minutes." Inside the room, Elva looked the same, small, fragile, but her breathing was steadier. The color in her lips had returned slightly. Jamie walked to her bedside, his steps slow, reverent, as though one wrong move might shatter the fragile miracle unfolding in front of him. He took her tiny hand in his thumb tracing the soft curve of her fingers. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered, voice trembling. "It's Daddy. You scared us, you know that?" No response, but the faintest twitch of her fingers, enough to make him choke on a laugh and a sob all at once. He sat there for hours. Nurses came and went, machines beeped, but Jamie didn't move. He told her stories. About the silly things her sisters did that week. About the movie he hadn't finished filming. About the family dog waiting for her at home. It didn't matter that she couldn't hear him, he just needed to speak. By afternoon, Elva's condition had improved slightly. Her body was responding, the doctors said. The phrase, "signs of recovery," echoed through the corridor like a hymn. That night, Jamie refused to leave. He sat by her bed while Amelia slept in a chair nearby. The lights dimmed, the hospital quieted, and he just watched her. Every small breath she took was a miracle. At one point, he pulled out a small notebook and began to write, something he hadn't done in years. His handwriting was uneven, rushed, full of emotion. "Dear Elva, you'll probably never remember this week, but I will. Every second of it. I've spent my whole life pretending to be strong, on screen, in interviews, in front of the world. But nothing terrifies me like the thought of losing you. If I could take your place, I would. Without hesitation. You've reminded me that life isn't about being perfect. It's about fighting, even when it hurts. And you, my love, you've fought harder than anyone I've ever known." He closed the notebook, wiping his eyes before Amelia could see. 2 days later, Elva opened her eyes. It happened quietly, without drama. Just a small, sleepy flutter, and then a whisper, "Daddy?" Jamie froze. He turned to her, barely daring to believe it. "Hey," he said softly, leaning in. "Hey, I'm right here." Her lips curved weakly into a smile. "I'm thirsty." He laughed through his tears. The kind of laugh that comes from relief so deep it hurts. Amelia stirred awake, saw their daughter conscious, and immediately broke down. The three of them held each other, the machines beeping around them like applause. The doctors called it remarkable. Jamie called it a miracle. A week later, they brought her home. The sun was shining again, the same garden now filled with laughter instead of fear. Elva ran clumsily toward her sisters, her small hands clutching the same pink bracelet Jamie had kept with him every night in the hospital. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Jamie stood alone on the porch, looking up at the stars. The quiet felt different now, not heavy, but peaceful. He pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. For the first time in days, he typed something public. "The past week reminded me what truly matters. Not fame, not success, just love, health, and family. Hold your loved ones close. Nothing else is promised." He hit post, then set the phone down. Inside the house, he heard Elva laugh, a clear, sweet sound that filled every corner of the home. He closed his eyes, a soft smile tugging at his lips. She was alive, she was laughing. And for Jamie Dornan, that was everything. As he turned off the lights and walked upstairs, one thought stayed with him, quiet, simple, absolute. He'd faced fame, loss, and pain. But nothing had ever taught him more about love than the moment he almost lost it.